Welcome to the monthly Mayor and Commission agenda setting meeting. No formal action will be taken tonight. Items, with the exception of SPLOST 2020, will move to the Tuesday, August 6th voting session. SPLOST 2020 will be voted on this Thursday, the 18th of July, beginning at 6 p.m. If you have, yes, ma'am. If you have a cell phone, please turn it off or to silent. If you're watching from home, tune into channel 180. If you're watching from home, you're already on channel 180. For those in the chamber, our printed agenda is on the table.
You're Mayor Pro Tem, because you state the obvious.
Yeah. A printed agenda is on the table on the right side as you enter the chamber. There are also passes for the parking deck out there. There will be several opportunities for citizen input tonight. The first will be on the consent agenda items 1 through 8. The second will be on old and new business items 9 through 17 and 19. The third will be zoning-related items 17 and 18. I'll provide more information at that time. If you wish to address the Mayor and Commission at the appropriate time, please come to the podium, state your name and address. You will have 3 minutes. There is a timing light on the clerk's desk here. That's the clerk Spratlin's desk, which will be green as you begin speaking, and 2.5 minutes in it will turn red, meaning it will turn yellow, meaning you have 30 seconds to complete your comments. Thank you for being with us tonight. So now we'll open up the floor to comments on the consent agenda items 1 through 8. Hearing none, we'll come behind the rail. And any commissioners wish to address any items on 1 through 8?
Yes, the one, I'm trying to pull up my agenda here, but the one about the overgrown lots, the recommendation is to pass out with no action, and I wasn't on that committee, so I don't know what the discussion was, but I do know that that's the issue of overgrown lots is something that I hear quite a bit about from some of my constituents, and so is that somebody, Commissioner Wright, I guess you chair the committee, if you could maybe talk a little bit more about
Item
that.
8, Commissioner Wright.
Yes. It came to committee and we had code enforcement give us a rundown of how it had been working, and I think some of the stats for that is in the agenda report. And they felt like it was working and it didn't need to be modified, and that it was, they were getting compliance, the number of citations, I think were going down, and it got to where warnings were working. Does that sound accurate? And so I had brought it forward because there had been some complaints in my district, and I wanted to make sure that the front line of being able to enforce it when they go talk to somebody was working. And then I think the biggest difference was what was natural and what's overgrown. But they didn't need any modifications with what we were doing on height of grass or any of the ordinance.
Okay, because I know that we had talked in the past about the International Property Management Code and including some additional things from that, which we don't currently have under our code, that might have helped with some of the most egregious examples of basically, one step above derelict properties that need to be addressed. But
Right, and we did go further in that your, what's in your yard, your ivy, your vines have to stay in your yard. And then also if it's growing on a house to where it's covering up what shouldn't be covered up, that is in there. And I don't know that we had any examples brought forward that, I'll let Deborah speak to that if she knew of any other insights.
No, Commissioner. As a matter of fact, the building inspections director came and attended the meeting and said, in fact, that it's been working so well and the numbers were dwindling and there were no known concerns of that nature.
Does that not sound like what's happening over in what you're hearing?
Well, I've had one, we could talk about it later, but I've had one particularly egregious case that has taken a long time to sort out.
Yeah, I think that there also had some, sometimes when there's other factors involved, that they have to go maybe and add to the resources for the discussion of it. But I think as far as more the straightforward talk to the person, and and code enforcement, they didn't feel like we needed to embellish or modify it. And that was kind of a year checkpoint, I think, was also because of some of those things, the details, we wanted to make sure it was working.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Thornton.
I actually have two questions about item number 2 and item number
She wants to buy a truck.
3. I just want to make sure I understand what the purchase of 3 tandem axle dump trucks were. I read that. I just don't get that part. What was
It's
that about?
replacing 3 that have, are aged and the maintenance costs are going up. So these are not new items, they're replacement items.
Okay, so replacing
3 dump trucks.
Okay. And then my next question is on number 3, the Hancock Industrial Way private pump station and force main. Is that connected to the amphitheater water lines and stuff like that?
No, no, Commissioner, this is on the other side of town. This is
Okay.
actually the Bulldog Estates
Oh, okay, I'm
part
good.
over there off Hancock Industrial.
Okay, okay.
And this is the zoning changes. Y'all approved their zoning change last month.
I'm good with that. I have some questions on the conversation that we've had with the mayor, and I know you have too. And I just want to make sure that wasn't it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Denson.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. On item number 1, actually, I had a couple of questions for the managers. So I see, so this is going to be keeping the contract with Gillig, who we've had previously with, right? Correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I see on facts and issues number 5, it says the Transit Department currently plans to purchase only heavy-duty transit buses with hybrid electric propulsions until 100% electric heavy-duty transport bus ranges exceed 275 to 300 miles a day. I did see that Gillig just this past May announced their first full electric battery-powered bus. So I'm wondering if we have an idea of what the range is on that. I guess because because the other thing that we have here is that we make sure that we have funding secured to support 100% electric buses. And of course, it all hinges on SPLOST, which we'll be talking about later on tonight and on Thursday. But strong potential that we will have that funding there. So I guess I don't want us to get into a 5-year commitment here with a company who doesn't meet our standards of electric buses. That if their electric bus that they have available doesn't have that miles a day, I would like us to look for a bus contractor who does have such buses. And so I guess I would like to have that removed off the consent agenda.
All right.
So we can.
Item 1 off the consent. Anything else, Commissioners? All right, so we'll go to old and new business, items 9 through 17 and 19, and ask for citizen input. If you'd like to step up to the podium.
Hey everyone. My name is Carrie Ritzler. I live at 325 Ann's Court, and I'm here representing the steering committee of the Citizen Steering Committee of 100% Athens. As the steering committee for the 100% Athens Clean and Renewable Energy Initiative, we applaud and thank your effort for fully supporting SPLOST 2020 projects that provide funds that will start making our 100% renewable energy resolution a reality and reducing our community's carbon footprint. With this funding, we will become a leader among the 125 other cities that have made a similar commitment. Part of our commitment at 100% Athens as the Citizens Committee is also to be the ears and eyes of the community concerning all things related to transitioning Athens to 100% renewable energy. To that end, let us remind you that with each new construction project, we are increasing our carbon footprint rather than reducing it. Construction alone represents between 15 and 30% of the life cycle CO2 emissions of a building. Thus, we expect you to keep the Athens 100% resolution in the forefront as new SPLOST 2020 projects like an East Side Library and space modernization project are designed and built. CO2 assessments should be conducted for these new construction projects, and we should strive to construct these projects to be net zero buildings. We also want to comment on the addition of the Classic Center Arena. The last-minute inclusion of the arena makes a full conversation about all of its impacts difficult, but that doesn't relieve us of our responsibility to meet the goals of 100% of the 100% resolution as we build the Classic Center Arena. Arenas are known for being particularly unsustainable, so let's make ours the exception. We applaud the Classic Center staff for including LEED certification measures in the outlined project proposal. However, LEED buildings on average reduce energy consumption by only 25 to 30%, not generally held to be enough to offset the remaining energy usage through the utilization of on-site solar generation, and net zero is our goal. We therefore request that the arena be built with a net zero energy goal, and also that the Classic Center formulate a carbon offset plan to measure and mitigate carbon emissions from the arena's construction and annual operations. Further, we believe that the funding allocated to the SPLOST Center represents a sufficient subsidy by Athens-Clarke County, and that the SPLOST 2020 renewable energy funding should not be tapped to meet these goals for the arena. Finally, we are concerned about the funding shortfall created by extending the SPLOST by 1 year, but keeping the renewable energy funding the same. Office of Sustainability Director Andrew Saunders has calculated that to reach our 100% renewable goals, the city needs to be investing $1.5 million a year into energy sustainability efforts. Therefore, we request an increase of $1.5 million to the newly combined projects 84 and 51. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ritzler. Anyone else?
Carol Myers, 260 Spalding Circle. I have a very quick comment, which is just a request, since it's Tuesday that you'll be voting on this.
Thursday.
I would really appreciate if the project descriptions for the SPLOST projects are available to the public before the meeting, and it would be really nice to have them 24 hours before the meeting to review them. I think it's hard to comment when you don't know what you're commenting on. That's it. And that goes for what's our word? Being able to see everything. Right, got it. And I am concerned about the addition of the Classic Center in terms of its transparency in the process and the kind of questions we've been able to ask or even just be aware of. It might in the end be the best thing in the world, but I feel like there's a lot of questions I have about that project and the addition of the development around it, which didn't exist in the first presentation to the SPLOST committee. Anyway, that's it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Just to be clear, the vote is Thursday evening.
Thursday. Did I say Wednesday?
Tuesday.
You said Tuesday.
Just wouldn't want you to miss it, Carol. Anyone else? All right, so we'll come behind the rail and we'll start. I thought on SPLOST what we would do is perhaps talk about the two commission-defined options first. And then we'll open it up to you guys to talk about any particular project that you want to discuss or ask questions about. Yes.
Can you clarify the process? Because in reference to what Ms. Myers just brought up, the latest list of the project descriptions that came from Wednesday's work session, they're printed here at our desk, and so where are they going to be for the public?
Well, I believe, and Ms. Spellman, correct me if I'm wrong, they'll be on our webpage in the agenda for Thursday night's meeting. Right. And when would that be published?
Hopefully, probably just thereafter
Tomorrow. Okay.
And then I have a commission-defined option related to Thursday's meeting, so that's when we should be talking about it, or we talk about it now and talk about it then.
Well, it's an agenda-setting meeting, so if you would like to talk about it now, I think
So
that would be
this,
appropriate.
this is the agenda-setting meeting for Thursday's meeting
For-
also.
For both,
Okay, I'm catching on.
for both.
Do you want me to go first since mine's kind of simple?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, okay. So I sent out, and again, I apologize for the last minute stuff. This all is happening fast for everybody. What I am asking for consideration, and Commissioner Davenport has signed on at this point, and for tomorrow's agenda, if anybody else wants to sign on this, I'll be happy to add another name. But it's in reference to adding the Livestream pipe replacement project, which has gone through the manager to be reflective of what's been going through the process all along. And then our attorney has also looked at it to address the objectives that we asked on Wednesday for the project descriptions to be concise and not too detailed. And then it also includes, to the extent of the law, allows these funds to be used as a matching fund for leveraging grant opportunities. But it would be $100,000 put on there, and it basically is having this item on the SPLOST so that as revenues come in and are higher than expected, or if there's an issue that's unexpected underground that emerges, that we would be able to use this funding.
Commissioner Wright, may I suggest you explain what Livestream is for the folks who may not know?
We're going there?
Sure.
Okay. So the live stream, I think the manager might be able to do that a little bit better than me.
Well, perhaps you will.
Sure. Well, what staff has identified is there's a whole bunch of infrastructure underground that the citizens can't see. And a live stream replacement program, it speaks to many of the culverts where live streams have been piped and covered over and developed over. And what happens was that they use corrugated metal pipe in the old days, and still do in some cases. We use concrete now because with a live stream, it carries sediment and grit, and it can nick. It will just slowly nick away at the galvanized coating, and ultimately it will rust right down the middle of where the water's crossing, and it will cause it to fail and collapse, and that's what causes at Barber Street and at Carriage Court, we've got some of these that are, failing. And in the last, couple of years, we've had 6 or 7 failures. And so as part of the look ahead, I think last year, early in 2018, the commission approved the live stream replacement program where studies have been done to try to project how much of a liability this is. And over the next 10 years, it will cost roughly $22 million to fix these. At the end of last year, the last iteration, the last commission accepted the first phase of the stormwater utility study where they adopted a certain level of service. And we also staff asked the commission, well, how do you want to pay for this $22 million that we see coming down the pipe? No pun intended. And there were really 3 options. You could put all $22 million on SPLOST. You could put all $22 million on the utility, which means a hike in the rates. Or you could do half SPLOST, half utility. And at the time, that commission said, well, let's do the half and half. But that project did not make it on with the Citizens Advisory Committee nor with the commission. And so I think Commissioner Wright's just trying to create a space where perhaps some funds can flow into that. If we did have an emergency and we didn't have ready funding, you can transfer funds, from project to project. Maybe some projects will come in under, So it was just creating some flexibility to be able to respond to that. It could be that you need to make up more of that in the T-SPLOST. Commissioner Link asked, well, is it eligible for that? We have determined that it is. So it's a nominal amount of money, but it just creates some space for you to have some flexibility in the future.
Thank you.
Yes, he did such a better
He
job
did
than
a
I
better
would
job
have
than
even
you
begun to
possibly
do. And so then also knowing that this would also maybe be a bridging potential funding until the next T-SPLOST, where we would do a more substantial thing now that we've learned that it can be in that. So that's the consideration. If anybody has questions that staff can give us, I think that one of the reasons I don't know, I believe, I was looking back at my list, it may have come off when the committee was looking at other funding sources, knowing that SPLOST could maybe do this. But we also, by having it on this packet, would allow us to repair something that might need to be taken care of, so.
Commissioner Davenport?
Yeah, one of the great reasons why I support this, and I think it's a great idea, is just simply put, think of what happened to Barber Street. It just kind of happened out of the blue. The culvert failed, and thankfully the city acted fast. But if we're expecting a T-SPLOST 2 years down the road, we at least want to have something as a cushion, just in case something like that happens somewhere else in Athens-Clarke County. So I thank Allison Wright for doing the hard work and getting this done, and I pray that y'all support it as well.
Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I also support this funding. So I've had some deep concerns about leaving this project off T-SPLOST because if we don't have, off of SPLOST, because if we don't have the SPLOST funds to pay for these catastrophic pipe failures, we're going to have to increase stormwater fees, and we know how controversial that can get. This is, very important infrastructure, and it's a very legitimate need.
Commissioner Thornton, my apologies for missing you.
I tentatively support this CDO and do look for the opportunity to sign off on it. And this issue of stormwater fees and the repairs that need to happen so we don't have what happened before, I know it's very important, but my concern is still going to be people who are paying stormwater fees that do not have stormwater drainage. And it looks like it's like downtown is more important than the outskirts of Athens. So if this is a start to what is a bigger problem, no, they're not going to have stormwater collapses because they don't have no stormwater drainage. So why are they paying? So I'm going to keep on saying that because that's the only reason I probably got elected, because it is a serious problem. And everything is like downtown, West Athens, like North Athens does not exist. And I wish that Commissioner Wright and I would have talked about this, because I do think that even $100,000 is not that much if we're serious about this. I do think that it not making the CAC list, I don't think people understand the importance of this to low-income families. Right now, I can see myself supporting it, but I'm just going to keep on repeating that North Athens is constantly overlooked when it comes to sewage and drainage and water. And that's my spiel.
Thank you. Anyone? Yes, Commissioner Wright.
I think that we'll talk more about this on Thursday, and when the mayor is here, Commissioner Thornton, he can share what he thought was a different dollar amount that might be the time for us to be speaking in larger numbers. I just wanted to get it on there in the...
I appreciate it now. Please understand, I appreciate it, because this is still new for me. So by the time I catch up on something, it's already out the track and down the road. So I appreciate it. And this is the most conversation we've had about stormwater and stormwater fees and drainage since I've been around. So I appreciate it. So I'm not being negative at all. I just want to make sure I represent the folk that elected me on this issue.
Okay. So I'll add your name to it, and then I'll turn it into Clerk Spratler.
That'd be fine.
I talked to the mayor about this, so the people, you said he had in mind making it a little larger so that you don't panic too badly. I think he has in mind like 500,000, so we're not talking 22 million.
Sounds like a plan.
So, okay. All right, so we'll move to Commissioner Link's commission-defined option having to do with the Classic Center.
Yeah, I've expressed my concerns about the Classic Center project repeatedly over the past few weeks, knowing that I would be out of town for that work session. And I, too, have serious issues with the lack of transparency and the fact that this project has been given multiple bites at the apple, and one of which was actually a closed-door meeting. So I'm just going to go ahead and read the email that I sent out, or at least part of the email that I sent out to this commission before I left town, and I've posted it publicly, that I feel sums up my concerns, and then I'll talk about the CDO that Commissioner Parker and I are proposing. So I believe that we can attract more jobs, enable local investment, increase tax revenue, including hotel, motel sales, and property taxes, and keep more money in our own community if we were to take a traditional incremental human-scale development approach to the redevelopment of the east end of downtown to create a vibrant, pedestrian-friendly extension of our historic downtown and encourage locally owned shops and restaurants, workforce and senior housing, street cafes, bike ped throughways, and green space that is directly adjacent to trails and transit access. A holistic and diverse neighborhood that not only will create jobs and be immensely beneficial to our existing local community, but will lure more visitors to enjoy a vibrant public realm with an array of unique private sector offerings. I'm strongly opposed to a large-scale, corporate-dependent, debt-fueled, taxpayer-funded, auto-centric, homogeneous project here, as I feel it is unwise from both a long-term urban planning perspective as well as an economic development one. I'm opposed to putting all our eggs in one basket and giving away the farm by locking down the development of over a dozen acres of prime top-dollar downtown real estate, much of it to remain off the tax rolls, in the hopes of reaping benefits dependent primarily on a single industry. And I have grave doubts about the long-term viability of an arena. Not only do these massive structures sit empty most of the time, but the block-length blank walls are not conducive to urban vitality. If and when the economy tanks, and it will, conventions and entertainment budgets are the first to be cut out. A diversified, highly mixed-use development of this property has a much better chance of weathering such a storm, as the traditionally developed structures can easily alter uses with the ebbs and flows of the local economy and culture. Note that much of this proposed facilities business model includes an increase in pay-to-play kids tournaments held at the Classic Center. From all the economic indicators I've seen, it's unlikely that the next generation of parents will have the disposable income to enable their families to participate in these expensive activities en masse. In fact, fewer millennials are having kids at all due to their uncertain economic situation. I'll stop there for now, but what I will say that, there's so much opportunity in this land, and I feel like by locking it down to a single project that is going to basically be dependent on the further development of parking decks and hotels, we're going to miss out on that opportunity. I would like to see us open the opportunity up for our local entrepreneurs, local investors. I'd like to see a neighborhood where someone like Pink Morton could buy a small lot and build a building to his own tastes and purposes, and that building could change over time and continue to tell the story of this community. So with that in mind, I came up with this language, and this language does not necessarily shut the door on an arena, but what it does do is keep the door open for further community discussion and inclusive discussion. I want to note that the Downtown Master Planning Committee was not involved in any discussion of this project. We have an ADDA. I feel like there should be multiple entities with input on the front end of future development of any part of our downtown. And I'll let you know that I have gotten multiple messages from constituents who will not vote for SPLOST if this project is on the list. I think there's a lot more community discussion that needs to be had, and at the very least, we can open the door to that community discussion. So I'm proposing this, Commissioner Parker and I are proposing this substitute for Project 3 to remove the Classic Center Arena from the list and replace it at the same dollar amount with a downtown economic development and community improvement project. This project will provide funding for land acquisition, design, construction, and/or equipping of facilities within the downtown business district area for economic development and community improvement projects in downtown and/or renovations, improvements, additions to, and equipping of existing facilities collectively referred to as the downtown development projects. The downtown development projects are to be determined via consultation with boards, authorities, and committees with missions pertaining to downtown issues, as well as through general public input and approved by the mayor and commission. Depending on costs and funding availability, project options include, but are not limited to the following: facilities that provide economic and/or community development while encouraging local entrepreneurship, benefiting the improvement of marginalized communities and/or providing for on-site childcare and/or elder care. Senior housing, streetscape improvements to facilitate bike, pedestrian, and transit connectivity and access to trails and facilities, land acquisition, public park green space development, and/or general public infrastructure improvements, particularly those reducing carbon impact and encouraging energy sustainability. Additionally, to the extent allowed by law, funds may be used as matching funds for leveraging grant opportunities. So I'll be proposing that CDO. I hope that we can get some support for it, and I hope that folks in the community will speak up with their concerns about this project.
Commissioner Parker.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I think Melissa hit the nail on the head with most of her background on the CDO. The one thing I'd like to add, I could get into my concerns about attracting corporate jobs here as opposed to trying to encourage cooperative development and development of local small businesses. I could express my concerns about investing heavily in the hospitality industry. But I think a concern that we all share and something that we're kind of united wanting to see is greater transparency. As Commissioner Link stated, this doesn't foreclose the opportunity for us to build a marina here, but it does ensure that we have increased and continued community input as we move forward to make sure that whatever projects do go there, they are for the benefit of the whole community. And so I think that's something that we'd all like to see. So I don't see a reason why this project doesn't also capture some of the other things that have drawn people to the Classic Center Arena project while also opening the door for continued community conversation.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Davenport, did you want to say something?
No, I'm just looking for Commissioner's link email so I can read the CEO.
It should have been sent out this afternoon.
Yeah, I just found it.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'll say something if you don't
Well,
mind.
please do, Commissioner Hamby.
So I guess what I would encourage us to do is there's been a lot of work by citizens committees, staff, and commissioners behind the rail put into this list. And certainly I think in putting this list together, it's obvious that what we've done is listen to what people have said when they've come up to the podium. I mean, if one or two people even came up and got up and spoke, we tried to find a way to make sure their project was on here. If one or two commissioners had something that they wanted done in their particular area that was important or important community-wide, we made sure it was on this list. I mean, certainly, if we go into this with the attitude that I need to support 100% of everything or I'm not going to vote for this, I think that's kind of not good for Athens, really. I think this is a good transformational SPLOST that's going to do a lot of good for this community. I've got people saying, just a couple of people calling me and telling me that they do like the Classic Center. And there's a lot of Classic Center support out there. I've got people calling saying they want the Welcome Center. Some people calling saying they want the Renewable Energy Project. And some are calling saying they don't want the renewable energy project. So, but I understand the importance of it, and I understand the importance of it being on here for the future as we move forward. And I think it's a great project, just like I think a lot of these have some good elements to it. Do I agree with every project on here? Of course not. I'm still questioning the Bears, but I'll support the Bears because I know it's important. I know it's important to some of you behind the rail and to a lot of people in the community, and that's I'm fine with it being on the list. So I think we've got to look at this list and not don't throw it out because you don't agree with everything on here. If you agree, there's several projects on here you may not agree with, but I just think that's not the right approach to take. I mean, I think we've worked on compromise. We've tried to listen to the residents that have gotten that will be helping us fund this, and and helping us do this. I will say this, as far as the downtown arena goes, I mean, you know, several years ago, there was a little project called Blue Heron that was on the table. Part of the Blue Heron project called for a 6,000-seat amphitheater. It was projected to bring in 584 jobs. It was basically in the right same spot as the 5,000-seat arena is today. And there's a lot of similarities there as to what that project was proposed and what the arena, and along with the subsidiary, sort of the senior housing and the hotel, are also proposing. But it could also be a catalyst for other things that can go down in that part of downtown. So I think, you know, at the end of the day, let's look at the SPLOST list in its totality and say, this is going to be good for Athens. This is going to be good for the next 10 years for Athens. This will change the way that we offer government service for our community. This will change lives by having the affordable housing component in it. And I think there's more good in this SPLOST than we're giving it credit for. So I hope we look at the total package.
Commissioner?
I have spoken with Commissioner Link many times about this parcel of land over the years. And we spoke over the weekend. And, you know, I have tremendous amount of respect for Commissioner Link because I know she always does her absolute best to represent the will and the wishes of her constituency. And if you have heard from your constituency that Classic Center Arena is not palatable, then I support your position. You're free to do that as you represent your constituents. I understand that. But I've in turn asked for you to respect my position that I've heard from my constituents that are very excited about the Classic Center. And I've found myself in a position representing a constituency from another district of folks that love the idea, think it's going to be great. And I think we can get to a place where we respect each other's position and understand where each other's coming from without going down the road of questioning the entire process. I can't go all the way down that road with you, questioning the transparency, closed-door sessions, another bite at the apple. I can't go with you that far. You know, I'm with you all the way, respecting your wishes and representing your constituencies. And I think you've got some great ideas in this CDO, absolutely. But I ask that you respect my position too, that I've come to support the Classic Center, and my constituency thinks it's going to be great. This SPLOST process has taught me a lot about cooperation, working together, and I think it's a good list. I think not everybody's 100% happy, but there's quite a few people in our community that are happy and think it's a really good project list. And I think that the work that went in just the past few weeks, Commissioner Davenport bringing up the Oconee River water trails, you know, he revived that and brought it back and put it on the list. And I was down on the Middle Oconee River yesterday, Ben Burton Park, and had my kayaks with Teddy. And
I was there Sunday and flipped over twice, by the way. I could have used those water trails. It's embarrassing.
And I took Swayze and Miracle, two young, bright girls who will be going into Chase Street Elementary on their first kayak rides of their lives. And I thought about you. And it was a really fun moment. So I think we've done great work here as a commission. I think we have a great list. And at the end of the day, if you've got to vote against it, that's fine. For me, that's okay. You've got to represent the wishes of your constituents, and I respect that. But please, I'm asking you, please, let's not cast a cloud on the whole process, because I think we've done a good job as a team to come up with a pretty good list. So, thank you.
Well, in that vein, let me just say a couple of things, if you don't mind. One is that we did have a closed-door session, executive session, in which we were discussing things about the Classic Center which had to do with real estate. And that's why it was a closed session. It wasn't for us to decide whether the Classic Center was a good idea or not. It was to talk about the real estate transactions that would be required. Two, we had a work session last Wednesday that lasted, 3 hours? We went over every single SPLOST item, every single one of them, and did some great work and made some compromises. And it felt like that we may have reached a consensus. And so I felt real good about that. And perhaps I'm speaking out of turn because I'm sitting up here, but, gotta say that. Okay. Commissioner Jensen.
Thank you, Mayor Bertil. So I guess I had a question to Commissioner Link and Commissioner Parker on theirs, just trying to find some common ground here. That with the CDO that we have before us, if it'd be possible, because we have similar language that says projects may include but are not limited to, and it goes on to list many things there. I wonder if y'all would be willing to include the language in the Classic Center Arena after that same statement, saying that officially saying that those things are also potential amenities and facilities that we built into.
I'm happy to include that as a potential. I mean, by referring to facilities that provide economic and/or community development, I feel that the arena falls under that category.
I agree, and just trying to make it explicit, which I think could garner more support. Yeah.
I mean, I am not opposed to excluding explicit references to Classic Center expansion. But I would like to keep this door open to have a broader and more inclusive discussion about the future of this extremely valuable, extremely visible piece of publicly owned property, and our downtown, and include the community and what they would like to see in our downtown into the future.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with those parts. That's why I was just trying to merge both things together, but leaving that flexibility, like you said, that you put in there with the language. The other question I had is that the CDO specifically states for the downtown business district area. I guess this question is potentially for staff. What are the limits to that? How far east does that go? The downtown business district area.
I have some, and I want to thank our attorney for helping me out with this language, which that might be up for tweaking. The central business district is defined as beginning at the intersection of Doherty and Pulaski, running east on Doherty to Thomas, running south on Thomas to Strong, east on Strong to Foundry, and south on Foundry to Oconee. My intention was to include the ADDA area, which I think is not defined by that central business district.
Right, that was my concern.
Yeah, so I think that, since the ADDA area has been expanded, it's expanded beyond the definition of the central business district in the code. So I would like to tweak that language to assure that this includes, to the river, basically.
Right, because I got the feeling that the land that we're talking about here tonight isn't actually included in the area that's discussed in the CDO.
That's my oversight. So I do want to tweak the language to assure that it includes what is now our expanded downtown area. And if that means, defining streets, also including North Downtown, which is now part of the ADDA area across Doherty Street. So, I'd like to work on a clear map of what that area is.
Commissioner Thornton?
I definitely am going to have to meet with Commissioner Link so I can understand exactly, because this has taken a whole new life just sitting here. And we just voted several months ago for the downtown area
Historic district?
historic district. This is too much for me, you know. We just voted, which I did not support after I heard the other sides of the story. Now we're talking about including them, the whole district. That's a little bit much for me, and I'm supporting you the best I can, but it gets cloudier and cloudier the more we talk. Now, I don't know, and the attorney probably is not aware that we did that several months ago, the historic district. But that's got to have an impact on this, if you're going to expand the language on the CDO.
Yeah, to be clear, what we voted on was the study of the historic district, not actually creating it.
Well, when we left out of there, things are on hold. Folk can't do stuff
Right,
with stuff.
for
So
years.
so that, to me, means we voted on something. So it's not just a study. People can't, just do stuff now because of that vote.
Till the study's over.
So we're putting stuff on top of stuff, and it's getting a bit confusing for me. I am willing to work with Commissioner Link or anyone to come to a good conclusion on this, but I don't think we come to a good conclusion when we keep, changing things. And the average person can't keep up with this stuff. I barely, but, so when we talk about another area of what downtown looks like, what does downtown look like? I even spoke to David Lynn. I didn't even know there was 3 maps of downtown. So let's keep it simple, but I'm willing to work with anybody so we can get a good consensus. I personally, I'll say it again, and I'll say it always, I don't support SPLOST, period. That's just me, but I know that is our tax revenue. I know that's how the government is run. So I'm willing to compromise with folk, but everything can't be the way it's always been, and that's leaving out certain areas. So I would love to talk to you. I would love for you to explain that to me before I give this any consideration of what exactly area you're talking about and how does it impact the vote that we made several months ago.
Commissioner Hamby.
Sure. Well, I guess I'm a little confused too, because what it looks like to me is basically a whole new project. And if we're talking about transparency, if it's a whole new project, it hasn't even been to the Citizens Committee, it hasn't been to us a few times, and so just kind of think about that in terms of how this plays out. I mean, certainly all these other projects on the list and more were vetted by the Citizens Committee, and the projects that made it to the list, certainly, like I said, we heard from residents who, and Commissioner Davenport with the water trails and such as that, to get them as part of the package. So, again, you may not agree with 100% of it, but at least give the consideration to those projects that were presented to the Citizens Committee and have been discussed at our meetings and brought up by citizens as well, visiting with us.
He said keep it short. I'm going to kind of I'm going to kind of disagree with Mike Hamby a little bit. I think that's one of the concerns that the Citizens Committee is having, that they made recommendations and we did something different. So I don't want to give the impression that this came, it was politicking. I mean, people just was coming and talking. So I don't want to put this on the Citizens Committee.
Oh, no, I'm not either. I was saying this is a totally new project that no one has seen.
But the way you said it was like.
Right, I didn't mean that.
Okay, but so we need to be, really clear about where stuff is coming from. And I hope we can move on because I do have another item on that same item, but it's
And
different.
shall we move on? Commissioner Denson, is that a yes or no?
I no, if I could. Link to it, I mean, but, so.
Link to it.
Actually, and going back to what I spoke about at the work session on project number 3 and also project number 1, and I appreciate the attorney going through and fixing up this language for us. But I really do feel like it's important for us to emphasize and prioritize childcare in these projects, that we are having direct community benefit happening here, especially to the employees.
Yeah, I was trying to move on beyond the CDOs, which you now have, so.
Okay, I guess it is, yes, I guess it is, but still on item 3. And so I would like to see us move the employee childcare up into the regular list of items where it says no, including but not limited to, then have at the end of that the employee childcare facility and office space sufficient to support such expansions. And I'm fine with keeping the example of the enhanced employee well-being initiatives that includes the elder care, as Commissioner Wright brought up. But I really do think it is, as we're pouring $4 million potentially from our prosperity package into childcare. Again, it's come up on the well-being project, it's coming up on Vision Athens, all these things that the childcare is a serious hurdle that we need to take on for economic mobility. I would like to see it prioritized and put up into that official list of including but not limited to. And I would say that for project number 3 and also project number 1. And with that, I can get with the attorney to kind of flesh that out to make that a little more clear. But, yeah.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Manager?
I do want to say, we really haven't fleshed out what that looks like, and one of the things that we try to telegraph with the SPLOST is what the operational impact would be. And so I just want to say, I don't have a good operational impact feel for what that might look like at this point, but I'm open to any suggestions y'all may have.
Commissioner Thornton?
Are we still talking about this CDO? Because I got something else I want to say about this.
I guess we are. Yes, ma'am.
I did not know how to do this, but I have been informed on that. That support I gave for the mobilization health thingamajigga, which sounded good, is not what I thought it was. So I assume I want to pull back my support. Do I need to do a CDO on that, or can I just, I don't support it no
You'll need
more.
to do a CDO that eliminates
I
that
will have a
project.
CDO to you guys tomorrow. I made a mistake. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and I need to fix that. So I will be doing a CDO.
I will say, Attorney Drake and I talked about that, and I think he tried to position the wording to where it could do things like I think you were wanting it to do, that, you know, if we have this type of vehicle, perhaps we could partner with the hospitals to provide some mobile treatment as opposed to just.
Oh, so you
testing.
did know what I was trying to say? Okay, all right.
So.
Yeah, so
now-
have that talk of it and decide whether you want to.
Okay, all right, then I'll get with you.
Okay.
I appreciate that because, you know, the calls that I've gotten, I'm like, what the heck? You know, and it doesn't do nowhere near what I thought. So if you, at least, I appreciate that, I'll get with you, and then you'll know if you're going to get a CDO. How about that?
All right, so Commissioners, I was thinking we could just open the floor up to the rest of SPLOST, or we can go down the list and you can jump in. What would you like to do?
Just the points that we need to hit.
Yeah, let's just open the floor, and whoever wants to make a point about something that hasn't been discussed already, let's.
Thursday night to do that.
Yeah.
That's very true, but Commissioner Wright, do you have something to say, ma'am?
I do. Due to the fact that I have not even read the new statements to go with the projects after the hours. I think it was more like 4 Wednesday.
was.
I think that we should have time to digest what these are, and then we can chat about them on Thursday.
We might be more
If-
informed.
And I believe there's a deadline of noon tomorrow if something is supposed to be in the agenda for.
Yeah, well, we're not going to change anything tonight.
Well, some of us have a commission-defined option to turn in.
Yeah, but
So-
that's. Commissioner
Noon
Hess.
tomorrow.
And I just wanted to, because this was something else I heard a lot of concern about from constituents. And I just want to thank, again, the attorney for doing the work here on project number 2. As Commissioner Parker and I asked to have some language for saying that we're going to do our best to limit displacement and move forward in a way that minimizes displacement with the affordable housing project, that I think the attorney captured that language well there, saying that we are going to limit the displacement of existing residents when considering available options here under, to the extent allowed by law, so we add that so it's legally in there. But I wanted to point out to residents that it's back in there, and I think that's a good step.
Good point. All right, shall we leave SPLOST till,
I had one last thing.
yes,
I
Commissioner?
wanted to address the concern about projects 51 and 40 and 84 regarding the amount of investment needed over the next 10, now 11 years in order for us to reach our sustainability goals, and see if there is interest in or possibility that we may amend the amount for this project to match what the Sustainability Office has identified as our need-to-meet goal.
And that's to increase the amount, since it's an
Yes.
11-year SPLOST? Well, I would suggest you do a commission-defined option. Maybe work with,
I would only if there was significant interest in making sure those line up, because otherwise it may not be worth pursuing. So I wanted to just create room for conversation now before we move on. If anyone would like to add anything on that point.
Commissioner Hamby?
Sorry, which line were you looking to increase there, Commissioner Parker?
Projects 51 and 84?
It's now called Project 11 on our list. They gave it its
Oh,
own
okay,
number,
yeah, I'm sorry.
which threw me off too.
Yeah.
Renewable energy project?
I mean, I don't have a problem increasing it.
I mean,
Commissioner?
I would express interest also in doing so. I will admit I'm very hesitant on getting out the calculator again with this, but
Yeah, as am I, but.
it's a good point that we took on this resolution, this commitment, and if we're doing so, we need to be committed to it, financially and politically. So.
And then, if I may, in consolidating those projects, we made a promise not to reduce the amount of either. And so I feel like if in extending the SPLOST, we need to make sure we hold to that, so.
Okay.
Are you going to do the math on that, Commissioner?
For the,
She's going to do a commission-defined option, so someone's going to have to do the math.
yeah,
How much was that going to be? I'm sorry.
1.5 million
Per year?
for 1 year.
For just one year?
Just adding a year, basically,
Yeah.
to it.
Well, it's adding, it'd make it
13,
313.
yeah.
Yeah,
I hate to use, yeah, it's fine by me.
yeah, that'd be right.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so shall we move on and go to item number 10, Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program Competitive Grant? Has anyone read that? This is a $750,000 grant that we're applying, the police department is applying for.
Consent? Can it go on consent?
Can we go on consent? Yes.
Yes.
9 on consent, Jean.
10.
I'm sorry, 10.
Good try.
Yeah. Number 11, U.S. DOT better utilizing investments to leverage development grant build.
I have a couple questions about that.
Commissioner Lane?
My question is just primarily about the program. This is a program that replaced the old Tiger Grant program. Is there a difference between, are there new requirements for this or any new goals in the program? They just decide they need a new name for it?
I don't know the difference between the two, but the concept's the same. It's for, projects of regional significance, and they're putting a lot of money behind it. The mayor and I visited with some of the congressional delegation across Georgia on some of the things we'd like to see, including air service. And at the time, Congressman that was on the Transportation Committee said that there wasn't any other projects from Georgia. And so we jumped on it to go ahead and put one in the hat. I now have learned subsequently there's another project out there. But we've done the preparation, we've applied, and hopefully it can bring some good
Yeah,
development to North Athens.
yeah. Well, I certainly support the program. North Avenue could definitely use some attention.
Commissioner Davenport?
This is a perfect time for Avita to say hurrah to North Avenue.
Well, I was waiting, I was trying to be,
Commissioner Thornton, would you like to say hurrah?
hurrah, hurrah.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll move
It's on
on.
consent, right? We're good.
No, it's not on consent.
Can we?
Can
Can we put it on consent? Yes,
Yeah.
let's put it on consent.
Yes.
That's item number 11. Okay. Item 12, Parks Facility Improvements. This is SPLOST 2011 project number 16, some projects 21 and 22 project concepts. So this is to approve the concept, correct, but not necessarily spending the money yet.
Well, so there were two existing project concepts. One was to build some more signage for the parks, and another was to build some fiberglass trail bridges at Sandy Creek Park. Since then, there have come up two more critical needs, the first of which is a fence enclosure around Barrow Hollow Zoo. We were inspected by that, and the current fence does not meet USDA requirements, and they are asking us to get that fixed. And then the other rather urgent one that came up was Cook's Trail from the flooding. There was some damage, and we need to do an engineering assessment out there to understand what needs to be done to try to reopen the trail. So what you're being asked to do is move funding, well, basically, in effect, move funding from the signs, the two proposed locations were Sandy Creek Park and Bishop Park. Move that over for the zoo perimeter fence. For the fiberglass trail bridges, we've identified some other funding, so use that funding as well to go towards the engineering assessment for Cook's Trail.
Okay. We'll keep that off consent so we can learn more about it. Yes, Commissioner Wright?
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear, because this does have a lot of options with it, and there's a lot of numbers for projects. So the sub-project 13 is park entry signs for Sandy Creek and Bishop Park. We're closing that. We're closing the fiberglass trail bridges because we're moving those funding at this point on to the more critical needs.
That's right.
And this is part of the process, and why I think it's good that we get the live stream replacement onto the next SPLOST, is that we have these topics to talk about and move money around as critical needs happen. And this is a perfect example of that as far as how I read it. And if you could see the literature in here that the fencing needs to be fixed before the next review of Bear Hollow, or it will be closed down. So that also speaks to, I think, the importance of us continuing having that on the SPLOST 2020 like we have it. So I appreciate the support, those of us who like the Bears.
Mike likes bears.
So, Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I just want to add that is something that hasn't been done since this commission's taken seat, and it doesn't happen very often, but you can move money across tiers, if something's not going to be built in the near term and there's money available. So there's other ways that the commission can move stuff around as well in that instance. But this is the route we're taking on this one.
Okay. All right, item number 13, airport capital improvements. Yes. This is to relocate the localizer on runway 9 because the Federal Aviation Agency said it wasn't safe where it is. So that's what this is for. Any discussion or questions?
It's just the lights that the planes, when they fly in, it's nothing. We just need to move it to consent.
I have a quick question for the manager. It might be in here, in which case I missed it. Is the FAA going to help us with any funding, or is
Yes.
this all on us?
Yes.
What's the split?
I think it's 90, give me 1 second. I think it's 90 feds. Give me 1 second.
Well, they're doing 10 million, and we're doing 1.5.
Oh, here we go. Sorry, it's right at the top. 10
Yeah.
10 million from the FAA, 680 grand from GDOT, and 1.6 from us. Okay.
Yeah, 90% FAA, 5% GDOT, 5% local, which is basically the same formula that we had for the runway replacement reclamation itself. It's just being extended to include this localizer.
Right.
If I do the math quickly in my head, I don't think it's 5% local and 5% GDOT, because we got two different figures.
Well, in general, that's the cost of the project.
But you're right, Andy. 5%
I'm no
G.
math whiz, but I can figure that out.
10.
Well, you know your geography. So.
I know where it is, I just can't tell you how much it costs.
I'll clarify that.
Okay. Item 14 is the parking deck equipment purchase title only. No, ma'am. Can we put 13 on consent?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Parking deck equipment purchase. Do we need to discuss this, Mr. Manager?
Sure. We've been working with the downtown development directors, and they want to upgrade the parking equipment at the decks. And so we have some capital funds that they'd like to put towards that purpose, and we're in the midst of the RFP, so we will populate the agenda item with the RFP for selection and approval by y'all to have those, to purchase the equipment and have it installed, and they hope to realize some efficiencies with the newer equipment.
I'm not real sure why we are sending out RFP. This is the same type of parking deck equipment that's used in the courthouse, which we purchased not too long ago, just a few months ago, actually. So it seems like, you kind of want to have all your parking deck equipment the same. This parking deck equipment that's now in College Avenue is not being made anymore. It's hard to find parts to. The new parking deck allows for, at the end of the day, somebody has to raise the thing so you don't capture a lot of people that are there like early next morning or late at the evening. So this new parking deck will allow you to pay keep the arms down and pay if you want to leave. So I guess I'm just wondering why go through all this process? I mean, ADDA certainly has this on your radar for several months now, and has asked that question, why does this need to go through an RFP?
So the question is, can it be done, can it be sole sourced?
No, well, the question is, it's fine if it does need to go through an RFP, but I wish that would have been told to us earlier when we first started asking about this. But now I'm wondering why it even needs to go through an RFP if we've already bought from the same company that we put in our courthouse parking equipment with.
So the question, Mr. Manager, is could we justify a sole source
There you go.
acquisition?
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner.
All right. Number 15, ordinance calling for the imposition of the SPLOST 2020 program. So this is just an ordinance to move forward with, right?
Yes, sir.
Should we start the whole discussion over again?
Let's start over.
Well, and I think, just to explain to everybody, I think that was all wrapped up in this other agenda item that you'll be voting on Thursday. And so we've bifurcated
This will
it.
be-
You'll take care of these
This will be in the
parcels,
Thursday agenda.
but you still, on August 6th, have to call for the imposition. And that's an action that needs to be taken and that allows the elections board to move forward with what
Okay.
they need to do.
Resolution reference Sister City, Cortona, Italy. Weren't you just there?
I was. Can I speak to this?
Well, raise your hand. Commissioner Wright?
Jeez. Doing pretty good tonight, till then.
Feeling himself.
So I have this on here as title only because the content of the resolution is being updated. It was in 1976 that the city of Athens had this sister city relationship with Cortona. Well, they, right now is the 50th year of this exchange program, and where Cortona, like Athens, is hosting and second home to these youths, and it makes a impression on them and a positive impression because of how the community embraces the students. And I'm going to be working with the clerk for the resolution to be put together, basically what the other one had that was done in '76, but updated. And I appreciate your all's support on that because part of it is that there's a new mayor here and there's also a new mayor in Cortona. And the political party, the new mayor in Cortona, it's the first time a new political party has been in charge in Cortona in 75 years in that region. And so it's also a good time to have an updated discussion about how we host them over here as well, often as well as they are hosting our citizens.
Thank you for that explanation.
When are they going to fly us out?
You can go there anytime you want.
I can
Is
get
that
the
part of-
arrangements.
Is that part of the negotiation?
Well, there is a lot to be learned by the culture over there. We might need to take a little side trip.
Yeah.
The department heads are also eager to do that as well. Water conservation is also a good one,
She's-
and recycling.
She's kidding, folks. Okay. Number 16, lease agreement with, number 19 is on your desk. It was just added recently. It's a lease agreement with Hancock Community Development Corporation.
19,
It's $1 a year.
oh, yeah.
You want to speak to that?
This is the new
I
lease
was
agreement.
going to actually let Commissioner Link speak to it.
Yeah, I'm glad that this made it forward. Ovita and I had met with the mayor and with the former attorney about this. Last month, we agreed to a $1 annual, or is it $1 a month?
Year.
$1 a year lease agreement for all the nonprofits that rent space in our facilities. And we wanted to include the Hancock Community Development Corporation. Those lease agreements are going to be undergoing a study to analyze the fairness and the equity issues regarding them and analyze revenues and incomes from those properties and whatever needs to be looked at to determine a truly fair rental agreement process. So we wanted to make sure that HCD got included in that $1 a year annual agreement, so they can be included in that process.
Okay.
I mean, I'd like to see this go on consent if possible.
That's what I was hoping it would go on consent.
Yes, ma'am. Jean, could you put 19 on consent, please? All right, so now we're going to receive staff reports and public input on recommendations from the Planning Commission. For each report, public input will be received. However, this is not a required public hearing, which is tentatively scheduled for Tuesday, August the 6th. So we'll be hearing from you then as well. So you get 3 minutes. I guess we'll introduce the first one, so go ahead.
Brad. It was nice to meet
They weren't included because their lease isn't up again until next year.
It's different times.
Different times of year.
Welcome aboard. Good to see you. Good to see you.
No, the other one was July.
Theirs is like January 1.
Those classes are when you sleep.
I didn't have my coffee today either.
Because of your it's fine.
No, I just forgot. I'm still jet lagged too. It's good.
It's hard for me to drink coffee.
Waiting on me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Have one zoning item for you all this evening, and then the acceptance of our quarter studies. But the first rezoning is a request to rezone from commercial office to an RM2 plan development at 1510 and 50 South Lumpkin Street. 2 parcels, a little over 3 acres. The existing this is the Mathis Apartments. The existing buildings that are there today will remain with the exception of one residential structure that is towards the south side of the property. 2 new buildings with 25 additional 2-bedroom units and a mixed-use component to the southern building consisting of about 3,000 feet of retail and restaurant space. Some new parking, 1 shared driveway with shared parking to the rear. 4 waivers, I believe, with this, specifically the first one to increase the density from the 24 beds typically allowed in RM2 up to about just a little under 30. Waiver from access requirements where we're required to have 2 points of ingress and egress for multifamily developments that generate more than 250 vehicle trips per day. And you'll see a condition that came from our traffic engineering department that addresses this waiver as part of the recommendation. a slight reduction in parking from 139 to 136, and a conserved canopy waiver to reduce the percentage conserved canopy. Subject property you see here, those are the three buildings that we all know as the Mathis Apartments, and I reiterate again, they will remain in place. And I've got a drawing in just a minute that will kind of fade them away and show you where the new buildings are going in conjunction with those. The residential structure down in the bottom will be removed as part of this proposal if approved. You see current zoning commercial office, proposed RM2. And whoops. That one will show you the new building up at the corner of Rutherford and Lumpkin. Totally a residential building that reflects the architectural style of the three existing buildings. All these buildings will be renovated per the drawings that you have in your packet. And then the building to the south where the new entrance driveway will be placed is the mixed-use building, 3,000 feet of retail, a restaurant, and residential up over the top. Some representative architecture. And then this is, there was a lot of discussion as we moved through this with the Planning Commission dealing with opportunities to at least get a second way in and out in case of an emergency, and everything came to this alley off of Rutherford up in the top left corner. And so I'll show you a drawing that has been submitted that the Planning Department, Planning Commission, and the Fire Marshal's Office are comfortable with from a standpoint of emergency ingress and egress that would ultimately go to this driveway. But again, reiterating, it would be a lock gate with a Knox box that would only be accessible by emergency vehicles. It would not allow residential traffic or otherwise to utilize Rutherford Street from this development. Planning Commission recommendation, and this went through a couple of iterations with them before they got to this point, but it is ultimately they're recommending approval with conditions. I'll show you that emergency access, how it plugs in. The Lumpkin Street driveway designed to restrict left turn movements onto Lumpkin Street. So it would basically be a three, you could turn right out, you could turn left in or right in, but no left turns. If you're exiting this property, you could not turn left and go north on Lumpkin Street. And a lot of that is part of issues with the alignment of, I think it's Woodrow across, I think.
Yeah.
So, and it really was very, very difficult, if not impossible, to align those driveways with any kind of design that still respected the street with that building. Planted trees to be large species where unobstructed.
Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure.
The driveway,
Yep.
respecting the street with regard.
I can. Let me jump through these real quick, and then I've got a drawing that I'll show you. There were about six bedrooms, I think, in the older buildings that were really small that they're wanting to convert to offices or studies. We allow that to occur, but they have to have at least a 6-foot case opening in order to not qualify as an additional bedroom and thereby be counted. And then right-of-way dedication that you're used to seeing. All right, let me jump back to this plan. All right, see if I can do this without it jumping. There we go. All right, you see the existing street here comes in kind of at an angle onto Lumpkin. The original proposal was to put the driveway immediately across from it. If you're going to do that, what you end up getting into then is that building, you see it sits up close to the street. It has street access or kind of patios out between the sidewalk and the front entrances to that building. You would have had to have taken that building and turn it 90 degrees to the left where you would have effectively had an end to Lumpkin Street, but it would have run deep into the property, about in the area where the current entrance and exit driveway is now. So the solution in working with traffic engineering was to just eliminate the left turn movement, and they feel like it will function effectively. And it keeps that building up on the street with kind of a pedestrian interface along the sidewalk. So that was the recommendation. There's the no left turn. That is the proposed design for the emergency exit to the alley that I showed you a minute ago, and I think the next one is the site plan again.
Could you show me that no left turn drawing again?
Not sure why I keep jumping this thing. The no left turn, it's really not designed at this point, but
Okay.
it will be to the standards of the Public Works Department.
Okay.
But it will, I mean, those are generally the concrete medians that force the right turn movement out.
Gotcha.
And then if you look up in the, I keep jumping around on this, but the end of the existing parking lot in the back where it comes around and it goes towards Rutherford and then stops at the current existing building, in that upper corner, that's where the emergency driveway will go out to the alley in the back.
Okay.
It's shown right there.
That,
Does that make sense?
show me that part again on the big map. Could you have a pointer?
I don't have a pointer, and for some
And you're
reason,
saying it's more towards Rutherford than towards the
right
end?
there
Well, okay. Well,
is where,
good.
is where that goes.
I went back there and was trying to figure out, because of that house at the end of the alley, and this is the best part of the alley as well, as far as the
It
width.
doesn't go all the way down that alley, just about a third of the way in is where it would go off into the parking lot.
So who makes sure it stays locked?
I mean, it would be, I'm sure the neighbors that use the alley would let us know if it becomes unlocked, but, I mean, that's not something that we would do a normal inspection of, but it, based on this being a PD with that as a condition, it absolutely gives us the ability, if we have an issue with it becoming unlocked, to require it to be locked back.
Was that the kind of thing that the emergency vehicles are the unlockers
Yes.
of it? And
They
any
have-
other time it's found to be unlocked would be reported?
Yes.
And because of the visibility of the other people, the current residents on that alley, I think you're right about it being self-monitored.
There was a lot of neighborhood involvement in this as it worked through the process with the planning commission. The applicant and his architect had numerous meetings, and the second planning commission meeting, not the last one where the recommendation was made, but we had made the recommendation from staff that we wanted a full access to that alley for second way in and out. And there was a lot of neighborhood concern, as you would have expected, putting more cars on Rutherford. And they showed up and they made those concerns known. And so that's where we ended up getting to where we are. And we did not have any opposition to this approach at the last meeting from the neighborhood.
What were some of staff's, are we current in our agenda report on staff concerns versus what's been solved? Like, was this little exit part, is that part of this?
It
Within the
helped,
packet?
yes.
I didn't see it.
Yes.
Maybe
no,
I didn't go
it-
deep enough.
It should have been, that should have been in your packet, and then it was reflected as a condition of the planning commission's recommendation, that they provide that. It came really late in the game. It was a design that was presented the night of the meeting to the planning commission after they had an opportunity to meet with our fire department and ensure that that was going to be an appropriate design for them too. And it was also shared with the neighborhood before the meeting.
And going back to your left in, yes, no left out.
Yes.
I'm trying to visualize, can you tell me where there's another one like that? There's a left turning lane on Lumpkin, so that's good. And this would also be happening, like if people were waiting to turn left in, they wouldn't interfere with Woodrow at all.
That's right. It's far enough down, they would not. What that's intended to do by eliminating the left turn out is if you've got a car leaving Woodrow turning north or
That's right.
turning south to go to 5 Points, at the same time that one exiting wants to go left, you've got a conflict right there.
Yeah,
And
big-
especially if they're both trying to get in the center lane.
Big conflict.
Big
Right.
conflict, so it's just eliminating that left turn movement exit.
And I guess I'll just have to look around and see how that looks, but I was surprised you can do both.
You can do both. I mean, what you end up with is a concrete island if you're leaving the property that pushes you to the right, but to the left of that island, it's a full lane in.
Okay,
So you can make a left turn into it.
okay,
It's half, sometimes you see them when it's the right turn,
Yeah.
right in, right out, where it goes both ways.
Right.
This is just half of one.
okay, all right. Andy's got
Kind of following up on that, Brad, I don't know if you're finished and we can ask questions now, but.
Yes, I'm
further
done.
to that. So, I mean, I understand the logic of the no left turn. So, as I'm looking at the map here, though, if I'm trying to come out of there and I want to go downtown, I'm going to turn right and I'm going to do a big U-E in the parking lot at the Grindhouse Burger place and then head back up South Lumpkin. So has our traffic analysis, have our traffic analysis folks looked at what that might do for congestion on South Lumpkin? People doing that?
I would say probably not, because it came, I mean, the recommendations up almost to the end were not to approve it unless that driveway moved. And this was a decision that came pretty late in it. But I think your observation's correct in that people leaving wanting to go downtown are going to find alternate routes, whether it's immediately left into Grindhouse and then out and up Woodrow and right, or, you know,
Straight back out of Lumpkin.
Yeah. Or, yeah, there are probably numerous options, but that's certainly the first one.
Do you know what the distance between the egress from this development and the entrance into the Grindhouse Burgers parking lot is?
No, sir, but see if we got something that will. Really close.
Is this the current driveway?
No.
No, okay, this one will show you pretty closely. That driveway's coming out right about where that house with the silver roof is on the aerial at the bottom that's being removed. And then that's the driveway immediately across and just down, probably less than 100 feet to get in. So you would have to go right out immediately into the center turn lane and then left across into that parking lot. But then it does have exit onto Woodrow, where you could leave onto Woodrow and back up to.
And with that center turn lane, if you're heading, let's say from the loop north towards downtown, and you wanted to turn left, I guess, into whatever that building is, where that, just to the south of the red line.
Yes.
Are there going to be any bollards or anything to protect two cars heading in the opposite direction meeting in the turn?
Not that I'm aware of at this point, no.
Well,
That's always kind of the conflict with that center turn lane.
Well, next to the house is the current driveway, right? Where it is. So there's not too much of a difference, I guess.
Not too much of a difference, no. It's just, I mean, the difference would be you're adding a small residential, a small retail component and a small restaurant with about 50 seats, I think, in it, and then the additional beds. 25 extra.
It might be that they drive by that.
So it'll be a little bit increase in generation.
I mean, what do you, oh, go ahead.
Well, I had the same question, so yeah, it's a little, I guess on that map, it's a little bit difficult to see. So the current entrance is at that house that's gonna be demolished now. Right now, we do have left and right turns happening at that. And do we have an estimate of what the increased number of automobiles leaving this is gonna be?
I think there's a lot of that. I don't know it off the top of my head. There was a lot of that provided, and actually the.
Do you have a number?
It was like another 200 and something.
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
Between that and the
300.
retail, and the applicants, the architect is here, and when it comes time for the public comment, I'm sure he can address. He's probably sitting back there right now saying, I know these answers, and they won't let me talk, so he'll be here in just a minute.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that all?
Russell?
Okay.
All right, we'll open it up for public comment now.
I was sitting back there doing that, Brad. Brett Nave, 200 Plum Nelly, Studio B&A Architects, and I can pick up on all of those things. We had a lot of conversation with, it's a little backwards from what I was going to say, but got a lot of conversations with traffic and Public Works, Frank Stevens and Bob Fossett and Tim Griffith. So I can fill you in on all those. Actually, and while you're thinking about this, in your PDF that you have digitally, page 34 is that channelizing island that we're talking about that does the right in, right out. You should have that pretty deep in your package there. It was a late supplement, so it's right at the end of all the 8.5 by 11 pieces. So just to back up, there's a lot of technical components to this, but the big picture for us is we're trying to create something that works with these old buildings. This property was built in around 1948, and not a lot has been done there since then. And the project began as a renovation project to update, improve the entries, improve the landscape, and we realized that we could do a lot better for 5 Points by picking up on the things that 5 Points is. Walkable, small-scale eateries, family neighborhood vibe. It's actually a pretty fun little place. I live down the street. Commissioner Edwards lives in the neighborhood. I mean, a lot of us live there, and we use it in that bicycle walking way as neighbors. And then even even if you drive to 5 Points, we all know that you park and you still walk around because there's a lot to do there. And so we just tried to pick up on these existing buildings. We think I personally love them. Our entire team really likes the way the buildings look. They're just tired. So we're adding to that. We do feel that the alignment of the street was going to be problematic if we did rotate that. We talked about this quite a bit. And if we rotate that building to where the current drive is, which is where you see the improved drive is the same location there at the bottom of the drawings. It feels suburban to do that. It feels like an apartment complex, and I don't think the original Mathis really feels like an apartment complex. It feels like walk-up neighborhood type living. And so we definitely wanted to push back on that. And so we worked a lot with the neighborhood, and Commissioner Edwards was there on several of the meetings with us. And we took a lot of ideas from the neighborhood on traffic on Rutherford, which is a difficult scenario. But I think we've come to an agreement or just actually a mutual understanding about that, where the developers who are actually locals here, Brian and his wife Sarah and well, I'm out of time, and Mike, this is their project. They're not selling this project. They're going to be here their whole lives, and so they want to do something that's good for the neighborhood. Should I sit down and come back and answer those traffic questions?
Stay here.
Okay.
Let someone ask you the question.
Sure. So from the channelizing island, what?
The question is asked, Karen.
Oh, sorry.
I got a
Yes,
question. So on your, going back to this issue. So on your, I don't know what page it is in your PDF, but the one that has the big kind of map with site conditions and parking, and it's got the location of the buildings, and it's got residential dedicated parking, retail dedicated parking, etc. And so you have traffic coming out of the development, and you've got 50% turning north on Lumpkin and 50% turning south. Well, if there's no left turn, then 100% is going to be turning south.
That's number 50, page 50, I think, on your PDF.
It's 165 in our packet, but I'm not
Oh,
sure
you
what
have
it
a
is,
lot more
because
than
ours
what
is all-
shows up online. I apologize. Yes, so that particular one that has the blue parking spaces and the orange-yellow parking spaces in that 50/50, that was put together to help have a conversation with the neighborhood. We were doing a worst-case scenario, so the page just before that, there's a chart on the upper right-hand side that's orange with a darker orange, tiny, hard-to-see line at the bottom, because that was the traffic difference that we felt was going on to Rutherford. We were looking at worst-case scenario of traffic, since there is no traffic study on Rutherford, but there are several on Millage and on Lumpkin, and they basically share and split 12,000 and 14,000 trips per day. It flips at the intersection. We were trying to help them understand that while we acknowledge they have a lot of cut-through traffic right there on Rutherford, trying to help them understand that this particular development doesn't affect that. So what we did is we took 100% of the trips and we just hypothetically split them each way. And then we think overkill, and they agreed that we took half of those moving north and turned them onto Rutherford, and we showed them the effect of the additional 230 trips per day on Rutherford. So that wasn't our guess on how traffic would flow. That was helping them understand a hypothetical potential worst-case scenario of how that might work.
I guess my question is, if it's going to be no left turn, which is fine, then, if 100% of that traffic is going to be heading right and south initially, and then presumably some of that will go onto the loop or head down towards Whitehall or somewhere. But a lot of it's going to be doing a U-turn to come back down to head towards downtown. Do you feel that reality affects these numbers here anyway?
I'm certain that it affects the numbers. Again, those were hypotheticals for a different scenario. But yes, it would potentially reduce initially, I guess, I'm going to have to use the word hypothetical. It's going to hypothetically reduce traffic on Rutherford, which is what we were looking at. But when we talked with traffic with Tim and Frank Stevens and Bob Fawcett, they did consider this in our conversation, and eventually Alfonso, Captain Dan, was involved. And because this trip generation is only 230 trips per day, in addition, which is less than a quarter of what would initiate a independent traffic impact analysis for any development project in Athens-Clarke County, they felt it's pretty minor. So we're talking about small numbers in the first place. And yes, some of those are going to do a U-turn. Some of them are going to go down to the intersection and go up Millage and maybe cut through Rutherford, which is part of Rutherford's challenge right now. One of the things along those lines that the developers, Brian and Sarah and Mike, agreed to, they proposed and agreed to with the neighborhood is they've already put money in escrow. They're funding an independent traffic study for the Rutherford neighborhood, the greater Rutherford neighborhood, to try and help them figure out how their patterns might be changeable with something deeper in the neighborhood, just to understand what's going on there. So that study would certainly take into consideration if we do that channelizing island that's somewhere deep in your packet. If we do that little right exit only, does that affect them in a positive or negative way by looping folks north on Millage and back across? People will turn around where they turn around. I mean, I'm as guilty as probably everybody in here cutting through Rutherford. I do it regularly when I drop my kids off at Barrow, or it just happens. And so their challenge is that all their curbs are painted yellow, and people are going through there. By my count in the morning is about one every 30 seconds, truthfully. And I sat in those parking lots for a while just to try and figure it out myself. And that's where some of those diagrams later in that package with the traffic comes from. And the rest of that was showing them the blue and the orange. We were helping the neighborhood understand that we were making a point to provide enough parking for the commercial and the retail, for the restaurant and retail there, and there wouldn't be any need based on the parking ordinances for anyone to park elsewhere. We wanted to provide enough and show that we had one parking space per bed plus about 10 guest spaces. So that's what all of that was about, was long conversations and work sessions with the neighbors.
Anyone else?
Oh,
Yes.
I just remembered. I do like this project, and I hope it does work out that we can address the concerns that people have. One of the things I was interested in understanding, it seems like the new buildings are going to be dropped in, so they're more street level. And I really appreciate the way you've left the arch of the original part that leads to the existing buildings. That said, how will the ADA ramping work when you're coming in and then the terracing that's happening to place those in there? What's a pathway for somebody that's not real good with steps or has wheels?
You bet. That new parking area is about, I'm going to wing it and say there's about 34 or so parking spaces behind what we call Building A, which is the building to the bottom of the drawing. Because we're currently that drive jumps up real fast, so it's not great for fire trucks and so on. We're pulling that down and normalizing that, and in doing so, we're able to cut that parking lot in just a little bit, because one of the things we want to do is level all these new buildings are the same height and plane as the old buildings. We really want it to feel like it was part of the old. And so that parking lot, you see those heavy black line, that L-shaped heavy black line, that's a pretty low retaining wall. It varies from here to nothing. Where it's nothing is as it approaches the initial L-shaped building. That cuts down enough that there's 2 accessible spaces in the bottom right corner of that parking there, and that sidewalk that's connected there, which is kind of hard to see, but it's darker going up the side. That sidewalk is accessible because of that plane change. So there's no ramp or rail or anything needed. You literally just go straight from the parking lot. The other end has a little slice, so you see it's at the end of the long original building in the center where the arched entry stairs are.
Yeah.
There's another black line kind of on the back left side of that L-shaped building. You can see the sidewalk. Well, you can't see it very well there, but if you can imagine, that sidewalk just slowly cuts down into the back courtyard area. There's some renderings in your package that show that courtyard area. It's kind of this tiered landscape piece. And that pops right out onto the street as well.
Okay, so if somebody has their little rolling grocery cart, and they've just come from the grocery, and they're coming back home into any of these units, I realize they're not going to make it up the steps in the center, and I just wanted to make sure the meandering path was not through the parking lot. It sounds like you're getting some connectivity in there.
That's right. All that rambling I just did, I was thinking you were talking about accessibility to the retail and to the street, which is part of the requirement.
Yeah.
The other parking lots, the existing lot in the back is on plane with the existing building, so all of the light, kind of hard to see parking that is about 78 spaces or so, that's all on grade or on plane. The existing buildings are not accessible in the sense that there's no elevators or anything, but we are improving all of the stairs and entryways to widen the stairs and get the pitches right and handrails correct. So all that improvement's being done, as well as fire alarms and so on. The other buildings either are on that parking lot behind Building A, as I call it, that's on plane. So you can come in, there's accessible units in each building. And you can, on the ground level, because we don't have elevators, so just the ground level is accessible.
Right. Well, I think that we underestimate the power and the choice of somebody who wants that ground level apartment. So I'm glad that these are being upgraded because of how many of those there are, and then limited steps. But I'm seeing now what you're talking about, and I'll just have to meander through there and see those existing sidewalks that you're saying, and then that'll help me with the residential part as well.
They're also doing the voluntary housing with Heather Benham that you and Commissioner Link helped us set up for the Baldwin Street project. We're on the same path for, I think we can't quite hit 10%. I think it's 8.5% or something.
Yeah. Well,
7 units.
That's greatly appreciated.
All right.
All right.
Next.
And I failed to put, I always finish these with, the recommendation to you from the Planning Commission was to approve with a unanimous vote of 7-0. Okay, that one wraps that up. I do not. The next item I've got for you is to place the Connect Athens, Atlanta Highway, Lexington Road corridor studies on your August agenda for you to accept them. I believe that question came up last week at our work session when you had the presentation. I think it was said that at some point we're going to get this and make it official so we can start really digging into it. That's happening right now. So the recommendation from the Planning Commission to you all was to adopt. You all really don't adopt these kind of studies. You accept them, and then you begin to work on them. And I know there's already been some early discussions and interest in establishing corridor implementation groups. And we really need to get this study accepted and formalized first before we can then start digging into it. So That's what we'll be asking you to do at your August meeting, is to accept the document. The changes that were discussed, the reformatting of the letters, we talked to them this morning, it is being done. The modification to the language dealing with the airport is all being changed, and then I hope you got your electronic version where you were able to make it larger and see it. So I think all of the changes we discussed last week are in process, and you will have that, should have it at least a week before your voting meeting, in which we will ask you to accept. There will not be an ordinance with this, just a motion to accept it, hopefully. And that's all I have for you this evening.
It's a record.
So I had a question on, it says the adopt with comments, and maybe this was covered at the work session, which I wasn't able to be at. What are the comments?
Yes. The comments were, we had 2 members of our airport authority show up, and it was, a lot of this was a timing issue. If you read the original, the draft version that you have now suggests that there should be a strategic plan done for the airport. That was adopted a month ago or 2. It talks about, there was some language dealing with commercial air service. And, it's challenging, but I believe we could have worded it a little better. I think the original language in there says that it is proven to be evasive or something and not likely to return. And that's, the airport authority, rightfully so, had some concerns with that. They have modified the language. The new language that you'll have within about a week just says that you should implement the recommendations of the strategic plan of the airport. And that was all presented last week, and the authority's comfortable with the language, and I've talked to Mike, and Mike's comfortable with our airport director, so. What the planning commission said was that, we really don't deal in all things airport. There's a different group, and rather than us try to make recommended changes, the commission, you all do deal with that, so let's move it forward, and then whatever the appropriate changes to the language are, we'll let the commission tell us what to do. We went ahead and made some proposed changes. I think everybody was comfortable with them last week, and you'll see those in your final
So
version.
Mike was comfortable.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And we have, the Airport Authority has submitted its proposal for small community air assistance program, air service program, and very optimistic that we will win that award, which will help us attract an airline.
All right.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We out of here.
Oh. Motion denied.